Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Back on 3rd down and 4, screen out to McCaffrey, blocked by Burford, 10, cuts back inside 5, McCaffrey all the way to the goal line and in. Touchdown, San Francisco.
Back to throw. They're going to throw it and try to run around. And they get it to Wilson. Wilson throws it back to Flacco. Flacco, you don't want him to have it. He throws the other one to the other man. They're going backward toward the end zone. And this one is over. It's taken by the Dolphins, and it's safety.
They bring 4. Pickett throws it down the middle. Touchdown, George Pickens. Pickett to Pickens from 31 out.
Empty backfield. Brown's going to throw from the end zone.
Oh.
Hit and brought down. Throws the ball. The ball
Touchdown.
comes out. Recovered for a touchdown.
Puts his foot into the ball. It's going to be short. Fielded at the 4 by Hines. Coming straight up the middle to the 20. Cuts it back at the 25. He's got an alley down the right sideline to the 40. 50. Down to the 40. 35. 30. 20. 15. 10. 5. Touchdown. Naheem Hines. 96 yards. Run as fast as you can. You're not catching Hines. He's your end zone man. Buffalo on the board with the first play from scrimmage.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Monday morning on Coffee and Cream in the morning alongside Damon Benning.
Morning.
That wasn't a very enthusiastic
morning.
Oh,
man, listen, I'm ready to roll, man. It's work. It's what we do. Actually, a lot of times it's not even really considered work. The hard part will be condensing,
fitting everything in.
Man, it's
so much happened this weekend.
It
started on Friday.
A lot going on.
We heard from Marcus Satterfield. We heard from Tony White. We'll get into some of that. We'll talk to Sam McEwen at 8 o'clock. He had some good pieces on both of those stories. A lot going on in the NFL.
Say he's just like you think he is. I wondered, right? Just because I've talked to him like at school and in different settings, right, other than at a presser. It's about exactly what I thought. Buckle up.
Right on the menu.
Yeah. I mean, what you see is what you get. And
I think you can see a lot of that in Tony White too.
Yes. And with Sat, I think you have to be pretty secure, right? He may talk to you a little reckless at times, say some things that I just don't think he's going to be like this wordsmith that's going to mince words. I think we're going to try to set a clear expectation. And I mean, I think that's how he's going to talk to you. So I think part of having some success here at the quarterback spot will be the ability to take in and receive information and keep it moving, right? Because it may not be, hey, man, how was this morning? You good? Anything I can get for you today? There may be a little bit of that, but my man likes football, and everything is a competition. Everything is a competition. So we'll see how that plays.
We'll talk Week 18 playoff picture. We'll talk Nebraska basketball and their overtime victory against Minnesota. We'll talk Creighton basketball as they dropped a close one to UConn. Just tons to get to. We'll speak with Jim Duggan, the father of Max Duggan, at 7:45. Again, Sam McEwen at 8. Brent Soboleski. Got that right, Shaner?
That is correct.
One down, 1 to go.
And then we still need to check on the pronunciation of Mark's last name because I want to be exact when I get it right, but I believe it's Weiser.
Weiser. Talking dogs. Go dogs.
Some Georgia Bulldogs. That's at 8:40. So a packed show. We'll try to get into everything. But before we do that, everybody have a good weekend?
Weekend was good. Shane, Shane was Shane had 1,600 views, Shane? 2,000 views? How many
on
views?
the Rubik's Cube?
No, my man lost a tire driving around. He hit a Grand Canyon-sized pothole.
I saw that.
In case you haven't been here long enough.
Or put together the Rubik's Cube.
You know you're going to get a few of those, so drive and proceed with caution. How many views was that for that fixed tire, Shane?
12,000.
12,000. Wow. So not quite.
That was interaction or views?
Views.
It's pretty good.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, well.
People care.
Cost him $200. Would you advertise like that? 12,000 views.
Totally worth
it. For
$200.
I'm
without a car for 6 hours. But, oh, man, that was worth it.
And you know what? You happen to be in good proximity to a place that could help you out with your tire sitch, right?
Jensen Tire. I was literally about 8 blocks from there.
Yeah,
so I just drove right there.
Free shout out to a non-endorser. Not a problem. Mm-hmm. What you weren't supposed to do was mention who that was, but good on that.
Well, they did a nice job. I mean,
hour and a half too, right? Got in, got out.
Hour and a half, got in, got right out. They only
Shane method.
That's not bad.
They only called my car. They called my car Mitsubishi, which it wasn't. So I mean, they did a pretty good job.
So it is it's a Hyundai, right?
Hyundai, yeah.
What is it?
Hyundai.
Like Honda or Hyundai?
No, it's not a Honda.
Hyundai.
It's Hyundai, isn't it?
It's a Hyundai.
Yeah.
How do you say it again, Shane?
Hyundai.
It's not a Hyundai?
How do you say it?
It's Tiburon.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the golf course in town.
It's a Hyundai Tiburon.
Oh, God bless Shane. He made you special.
What about you?
My weekend was cool.
It was packed with high school basketball.
Yeah, and youth. So cool thing was and Caleb, Millard Westside played Millard North. So normally it's go to one school, quick, get to the next. This one was easy because we stayed at the same school. Micah played Friday night. Caleb played Friday night. Mike played Northwest on Friday. Then they played, two schools played each other on Saturday, and was a big one. And Micah had a tournament, his I Have a Dreams Hoops Classic down at the field house where we saw some good basketball. So yesterday was pretty chill, right? Because my little guy's team it is a tough tournament, and they were second in their pool, so they didn't get a Sunday game. It's a 3-game guarantee. They went 2-1 and didn't play on the weekend, which is rare. This is a tough tournament. And then they went up to 118 building, got some shots up, and I did a skirt steak and some smoked shrimp for fajitas. So we chilled.
Sounds like a
lot of basketball. I forgot how much I don't enjoy being in gyms all day, but it's cool.
Bleachers aren't the most comfortable seat.
And I sit in the same spot in almost every high school venue.
Where's that?
It's usually a corner behind one of the benches, preferably the visiting team.
You can chirp because you're a huge chirp.
Yeah, I didn't say one word except I sat with Coach Lamanji. He came to the Westside Millard North game, so I sat in the corner with him.
Close to the door.
Very much so.
Yeah, you that is you in a nutshell.
Very much so. Hey, but
I need to know my exit strategy.
Didn't say much of anything. It was a good weekend of high school hoops, and that's it. Let's start walking. Get my little 35 minutes in.
New you.
I don't know about that. I just kind of want to. So I always have different things that I like to challenge myself with. One year I may want a 2-pack. One year I may want to. I don't know. It just depends.
One year I may want that
like
cake.
one year I may want to like be able to go. I may want to be able to hit a heavy bag for 12 minutes or 9 minutes or something like that. Doesn't seem like a long time.
No, it is.
Three.
1 minute's a long time.
3's an eternity. So, it was Operation Chill. The weather wasn't too bad either. I'm not a hurry up and get winter over guy. So I enjoy like the cold weather. You're getting some sun for the heliotropes, so they'll be cool. Some people need sun. I don't want them struggling. So, but I like the weather this week, and I'm good.
I found myself in the ER on Saturday.
What happened?
So Ashley,
Mary Kate and Ashley,
woke up hunched over
Mm-mm.
and with an extensive amount of pain down by her groin, like on the right side.
Yeah.
And we worried it was her appendix.
Yeah.
So we went into the ER, and fortunately, it wasn't very packed. Normally, when you go to the ER, you're rolling the dice, right?
Saturday morning?
Yeah. Early, maybe even early afternoon.
Okay.
So at this point, we're partially through the day.
Yeah.
You never really know what you're going to get. And we went to the hospital over in Papillion, signed her all in. Like, I don't like hospitals. She doesn't like hospitals. I don't think a lot of people like being at the hospital. So, a little bit of anxiety there. Got her all signed in, not really knowing what's going on. Took her to the OB room, and they just ran a CAT scan. They did a
MRI?
No. Why can't I think of it?
I don't know.
They did a CAT scan, and then they did an ultrasound.
Okay.
I knew it started with a U.
I don't know.
Me neither.
Fortunately, it wasn't the appendix. She had a cyst burst in her ovaries.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on.
Right. So, TMI, I guess, for some of our listeners.
Yeah.
I guess I should have had a disclaimer out there.
Good Monday morning to you folks.
I should have had a disclaimer out there.
So she's cool?
She's cool now. Guess how you beat something like that.
I had one removed from my hip. Is it rest?
Essentially, it's Tylenol and you just kind of time. Tylenol and time.
I had one removed from my hip. This is early 2000s, and it looked like kind of the head of an eraser.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time Dr. Hurrdat pulled it out, it was like an eyeball.
Oh my!
Oh yeah, stuff happens. So it's interesting though, because for the weekend, so that was right dab smack in the middle of, or probably the end of the Creighton and the Nebraska game, and you're at the hospital.
Yep. So that game was going on, following it to a T, and then boom, hit me with a curveball. We're at the hospital. Then it's the start of the Chiefs-Raiders game.
Yeah.
And then we were still at the hospital for the evening game.
Disrespect what the Chiefs did to the Raiders?
Yes. In regards to Ring Around the Rosie.
Dude, that was wild.
They are just playing with their food.
That was.
I mean? I don't know if I call that cocky or just weird.
So at the high school basketball game, you could just see people like looking at their phones and they're talking to one another. And Coach Queen looked at me and he goes, "Did you see what the Chiefs just did to the Raiders?" So then he shows me, and then I had to show Coach Lamanji, and it's like, oh wait, there's a game going on. But I was floored. But if you were at the hospital early Saturday afternoon, you missed both games between the local teams of red and blue Nebraska and Creighton. How about the runs in those games? Like if you went away for like 4 minutes and you came back, the score was drastically different than what you first saw.
It was 7-point difference, and then all of a sudden it's a 2-point lead for your team.
Yeah, and then Creighton makes the run, then UConn makes the run, and in Nebraska, Minnesota was a game of many runs, like MINI. And I was just thinking, wow, just the spurt ability.
And she made me laugh too, because she's on the table and she's like, "Andrew, I knew you wanted to sports bet today. Why didn't you find a hospital in Iowa?" And I go,
"Were you looking?"
I go, "No joke. I looked up some hospitals in Iowa, but then I'm like, no, she's the priority.
You
like,
can't.
I
You
can't.
contemplated it. Though.
I did. I low-key contemplated it.
She's got her hands full. It was cool to see if you start with Nebraska. Just their ability to withstand, right? Because, and that's a game they had to have, in my opinion, right? I mean, you got a brutal week coming up. It'll start with
not
Illinois.
A very good Minnesota team.
No, and you had to win that game, and I think you withstood some things. You corrected a little bit of what ailed you against Michigan State. You had gotten pummeled on the boards. Minnesota rebounds the basketball well. You found a way to hold that down and dominate the glass against those guys. D-Walk was the man.
Sensational. He looks like a running back every time. I feel like I make this comparison all the time, but he doesn't look like your standard big man down low. He gets the ball at the elbow.
And he's throwing dimes, too. He finished with like 7 assists.
But he tucks the ball, and then he doesn't even look when he throws it off the glass. It's almost muscle memory for him.
He's so crafty around the rim because he's a below-the-rim player for all intents and purposes.
And he's not your biggest big man. He's wide, he's strong.
But he is thick and strong. I love how he uses his shoulders, and now he's showing you the ability to turn over either shoulder. Because when you can do that, because he's pretty good with his left hand now too, finishing around the rim. That was a good one, and they needed that one, and it sets up for a late. Is it an 8:00 tip against Illinois?
It's a late game.
I mean, that's kind of late in Lincoln. I know the fans don't love those games, but I'm guessing PBA will be rocking.
If you don't love it, leave.
For that one against Illinois. So I think Nebraska needed that one, and they did it with some resolve after kind of a little bit of a lackluster performance, at least in the first half against the Spartans.
Right. Credit 2 things there. The team's resilience to keep rallying even after the 3 by Minnesota to send it to OT, because that gets overlooked a lot.
Oh, yeah.
When a team puts that ball in the net, you're thinking you're going into OT with all the momentum, and how do you shut that down? So good on the Huskers to kind of come out right away and insert their dominance twice. And then the team's offensive ability, settling for the best look almost every possession on the floor. They never had a forced look.
I thought it was cool too, because you see this happen at the lower levels a lot. Like, and just so happens I saw a ton of it in youth and in high school. One end of the court didn't affect Nebraska's other end of the court, right? Bandamel didn't shoot it well, but I thought he was fantastic defensively. CJ Wilcher didn't even get any shots. Well, he did. I think he was 0 for 3, maybe something like that. He wasn't getting any shots up. He makes some good plays late. Bandamel's ability to guard, share, and distribute the rock. Like, I like the fact that one end didn't affect the other for those guys as they found a way to get her done.
I like also Jawan Gary's play.
He's really coming along, isn't he? Like, that's one of those things that you could just see coming. Jacob Padilla and I were talking. This was probably a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. And we were talking about minutes and bench minutes and where that they were going to come from. And, he's talking about how he liked kind of Gary in that particular role because it was well defined. But you know what he's starting to show you? A little bit more offensive versatility. I don't know if they expected all of that, but it's starting to really come around. And how about, speaking of corrections, how about them knocking down free throws?
That was the next point. 16 of 21 on the day from the free throw line, which in a game that's 81-79 by game's end in overtime, you miss one free throw, you're not there.
Yeah.
You're not there.
Coach Hoiberg crediting the free throw lab. You put the little, which was weird too, because he had to call down to Jake and Kent. I think Milheisen is fantastic. Kent gets a ton of love because he's KP, right? I mean, he's the man, legend. Milheisen does a really good job. But anyway, he must have been in a different part of the arena live because I was, did I tell you I love press conferences? I just like hearing what coaches say. Anyway, he was calling from a different part of the arena. And he was talking about being in the performance labs, just working on mechanics. You get the little, it's kind of whatever it is, those deals that they put on you to make video games.
Oh yeah.
So you get the little pads on you and they're watching motion, engaging balance. And listen, when D-Walk is hitting free throws, the lab works, right? I mean, he came in as a 40% shooter, which brings the whole rest of that free throw percentages down, but those guys made free throws. I mean, Walker was 4 of 6.
I love
he's a 40%er. That's pretty good.
Announcer reactions too for when big men, I should say, that don't hit free throws on the regular end up hitting one that looks really good, and they're like, "Oh wow, that was a nice stroke."
Remember,
and then the second one just bricks off the back iron.
Remember, I was a Lakers fan, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that a ton with Shaq.
what big man over there spent like what hours on end in the gym after practice shooting free throws? Wasn't he the type of guy?
Well, I've seen a few. I had to watch Eldon Campbell. I had to watch Shaquille O'Neal.
In regards to Shaq, wasn't he the guy that didn't leave the gym until he hit like X
yeah?
amount
And
in a row?
remember, Shaq tried everything.
Mm-hmm.
He tried putting it just in one hand. He tried shooting it regular. We went a little underhand.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, hey, whatever works, man.
You know, throughout his career, he got better. And then Creighton ended up, you know, that was a weird one.
Yes, it was.
Because, you know, it always goes back to shooting with this team. Like, if they shoot well, it's going to be a good day. If they don't, then they're going to struggle to win, and it becomes, you know, a game that you lose by single digits. And early on, when Kalk and Nembhard got into foul trouble, that's when things really started to change in favor of UConn. They finally started going on some runs. I think they ended the first half on like a 13-3 run. It may not have been the exact ending to the half, but I know that at one point they were on a 13-3 run, and they didn't have an answer for Sanogo down low.
Yeah.
And during that stretch alone, think about missing Kalkbrenner and then having one of the best players in the Big East, the preseason player of the year, start just having his way with this Blue Jay team. Follow that up with poor three-point shooting. I think their first triple came 19 minutes into the game. Their last one came with 17 minutes on the clock from Shireman.
Okay, and because I think only Shireman and Reef Sharif had the two threes, right? Because they ended up going 2 of 16. But how about only 6 shots for Kalkbrenner, though? I know he only played 30, and I say only. He only played 32 minutes, but relatively speaking for him, I mean, because you got the sense he was kind of working his way back.
It's a different UConn team.
They didn't get a lot of. How about the crowd? God, they were. I mean, I get it. It's home crowd. It's Connecticut, right? But they were annoying.
There's nothing else to do in Connecticut. Other than
it's like holy.
Games.
I mean, you could just. Obnoxious is too strong of a word. They're just fans being fans, but the jersey tugging and the high. I mean, on a loose ball, and I was like, oh man. These guys walked into
a high school student section.
They walked into a hornet's nest with UConn coming off the losses, but nothing came easy for the Jays offensively. A lot of tough, off balance,
but it's obvious
contested shots.
It's obvious that when the top 5 are not in the lineup, Creighton struggles.
Yeah, but
and how do you figure through? How do you figure through that?
Creighton will never win a game in which if they're going to make 20 shots, you had 5 assists on those makes. That is,
I'm completely with you.
Now,
when the 5 are on,
when you turn the ball over 13 times or whatever it was, it was just so much dribbling and contested shots. It looked disjointed from the start. It just did not look smooth, although they did get to the foul line. How about all the whistles early? Was that crazy? Mm-hmm. I didn't know who Connecticut was going to be able to play. Well, it started with UConn.
Right, and then it was the
like
game.
I don't know if Hurley got in the, but it immediately turned on a dime. Because I'm like, oh, UConn's going to have 3 starters going to the bench with 2 fouls, and then it started to rack up for Creighton, and I'm just thinking, this whistle keeps blowing incessantly, and it was disjointed from the start.
Neither team shot the ball well in the second half.
No,
which is what kept the game close.
Close, yeah.
But think about what happened.
Did you feel good when Creighton went on the run? I think they took the lead 44-42, something like that.
They went on a 14-2 run right out of half. And that's what happens when you have your 5 on the floor.
Yeah.
But it's about making things happen when you don't have all 5 on the floor. I don't know if they can figure that out. I don't know if they have figured that out.
I don't cheer for UConn. I don't like UConn, but watching the Big East all the time, I'm a big Andre Jackson guy for them because
he's a good player.
And he does things other than score because he basically can't shoot. So they give him all sorts of space, and he knocks down one shot, but he gets a lot of hustle plays. He looks rough. He looks like a guy
He's a very scrappy player.
Yeah, I think in it's games like that, man, that's what the Jays need. But got a chance to get it right in what's going to be an ultra tough Big East. Goodness gracious.
Coming up next, what to make of the offense and defense next year for the Huskers. But before we do that, the poll question, Georgia minus 13.5 or TCU plus 13.5? We'll start there.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes.
From a yard.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you on Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. It is your favorite morning show, and we appreciate you joining us wherever you're catching us right now, whether that's on 590, 1480, on YouTube Live, on Twitter Live. I'm with my main guy, DB. It's Andrew Rogers, Shane Schillerberg on the board. We're having some fun this morning. Lots still to get to, but DB's making me hungry.
You
because
are
he showed
looking
me photos.
live.
He showed me photos of his
Skirt steak.
I want to try to describe
shrimp.
it. 5-star meal that was made at the Benning household over the weekend.
I just, I did 2 little skirt steaks, and because I've got to use up some stuff.
Do you get a cow? Is it like
I've got a
purchaser of
half
cow?
coming, so I need to go at some point in the next 3 or 4 days. It's in Aurora, which is a quick 2 hour.
Oh, nice.
Hour 50.
And you have a guy for that?
No.
You don't have a guy for a cow?
No, it's kind of bumming me out. So I've got to figure that out. I thought I had it figured out. But remember the day, so Thursday, remember when my phone hit the skids and I couldn't see anything? The screen was black. So I spent all day trying to figure that out. Well, apparently Dookie Clint, who listens to the show quite a bit, got the other half. So he was going on Thursday to pick it up. And I never got the text message because I couldn't see. Right. And I didn't get the replacement phone until Friday. So I asked him last week, I said, hey, are you still going down to get, and he goes,
what do you mean?
I went.
Right.
I was like, shoot. But that's where I met, where I got my both Buddha and Biggie from too. So I'm very familiar with the Love gas station right there.
What were they just in like a little chained in fence?
Yeah, and I can't remember. She's like in it's Wolf's with a W, kennel, or Wolf's Bulldogs, and I think she's in either. I'm gonna blow it. It's one of the rocks. It's either Guide Rock. It's either Guide Rock or Table Rock or somewhere. So Aurora was kind of a rendezvous point for us to get the dogs. But anyway, I don't even know why I just told you that story. But yeah. So I'd like two skirt steaks left.
So in regards to you eating leftovers in front of the TV tonight now, watching the national championship game, our poll question, who are you taking tonight? Would you take Georgia 13.5? Because this is what it opened as when I made the poll question.
Yeah.
And then I left my apartment and it was back down to 12.5.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I'm going to keep it at 13.5 for argument's sake here.
It is currently sitting at, wow.
Did it bounce back up?
So it's close. There's a couple 12.5s, a couple 13s, a couple 13.5s. So let's just say 13 for laughs and giggles. I would probably be a spectator.
It's pretty high to take Georgia, but Georgia could easily do it.
Well, they typically play their best football at the most opportune times. So, because they have a tendency to sleepwalk a little bit. But man, I said this with TCU and Michigan. And I don't think they will now. But remember, I said, don't underestimate TCU's physicality. I talk about them being better against the run than statistics show and how they fit in the run game. And they have a lot of versatility. So you can line up a couple of different places. You may be head up and they may get down a gap and a half, right? It's not, they move a ton and they bring some drama. So the thing that I think you'd have to worry about, the best thing, number one, is to be a spectator. But if you are, got to be wary of like a late TCU, like a backdoor cover, or just TCU being in the game, because all they've heard all year, and we'll talk to Jim Duggan here in a sec, they've defied odds all year. Through like week 9 or 10 or even 11, they were still the yeah, but team. Yeah, but they gave up to me. But
it started as Oklahoma State, then it went to TCU.
They get behind too much, but it's like, I don't know, at some point, and it's about now. who your record says you are. I'll be curious to see what the poll question says because the gates at the Vegas will let you know. The gates at Vegas.
I'm having a hard time too deciding there. So when Joe Burrow won with LSU, I was confident with that pick. Like, hey, I'm going to take LSU to win this football game. And I think it was a close money line. So I just sat money line, put a lot of money on the money line and just let it ride. But for this game in particular, you can't win on the money line.
Yeah.
Because if you lean Georgia, you're not betting minus 350.
It's minus 500.
Or now minus 500. And you're not betting TCU.
At plus 375?
But you're not putting $100 down on that.
Well, 10 will get you $37.50.
And I'm not opposed to that. But I'm saying
that's
when you bet
totally
big money,
you.
When you bet big money, no, because I'm big odds, small amounts.
Yeah, $10 for $37.50.
It's got to be above like 1,000 for me to put $10 down.
Dude, I've seen some of your hockey anytime scores. It's like $5 to win $50K.
Yesterday was not very good for me.
No,
no.
Skids,
tough day, real tough day.
Was it hockey?
Hockey and football.
Help Andrew out. 888-638-4876.
Hey, sometimes I need help. Sometimes I don't. Now, in regards,
what are you, like a mouse? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
In regards to understanding the offense and defense, I don't know if I need a lot of help because I think we'll start offensively for the Huskers. Marcus Satterfield laid it out, at least his philosophy out perfectly for people to understand. It was kind of like an offensive book for dummies.
Hey, did you see Run the Ball guy? He was like, woo!
Right.
Hey, then immediately everybody they're like looking around. They're like,
did he just say fullback?
Who's the fullbacks on the roster? Wait, do we have any fullbacks on the roster?
He's like, what tight end works?
Who can play fullback?
You know, and we'll talk to Sam McEwen about that at 8 because he had some names pop up on his article that were interesting. One being somebody on the defensive side of the football that kind of caught my attention. But, you know, having a fullback isn't the worst thing in the world. It really is not. If you want to play the long game, if you want to play time of possession, and you're telling yourself you're going to run the football more than you're going to throw.
And I don't think it has anything to do with being conservative or salt and clock. I think it's a style I think it's a style that they want to play. I mean, I remember being associated with a team one time that played, and sometimes we'd have a fullback, sometimes we'd have two, sometimes we'd have two tight ends, and we still snapped the ball with 18 seconds left on the clock. So sometimes it's just a style in which you want to play that you think gives yourself a chance to win. But it's weird, right? Because Nebraska's talking about using a fullback and a tight end or two, and Wisconsin may very well be running air raid. Who knows what Minnesota's going to do with that revamped staff? Northwestern transitioning. Illinois is RPO, zone, spread. What's going on in the Big Ten? Do you get the sense that I'll never be able to see it in my head as long as Coach Ferentz is there that they're going to get in, spread, and throw the ball around the yard? But look, there's the majority of the teams, and you heard Coach Rule say it, and you heard Coach Satterfield double down on it. A lot of teams run 11 personnel. That's one back, one tight end, right? You are in spread quite a bit, and you're defending spread quite a bit. So I'll be curious to see if Nebraska will actually be one of the different teams. I've seen teams win and compete for a lot of Big Ten championships with a tight end and a fullback. So I watch Iowa win a lot of games doing that. I watch Minnesota win a lot of games doing that. I watch Wisconsin win a lot of games doing that.
Wisconsin.
Right. Hey, that's going to be fascinating. That is.
Luke Fickell doesn't seem
especially now that they have like
that type of coach. So I'm not surprised.
You know, a third of Minnesota's staff over there in Madison. It's like, well, what are they going to do? But your offensive coordinator would lead me to believe. Can you bring Chapel Hill to Madison? We'll see.
And I think we got some answers on knowing what Tony White wants to do with the 3-3-5 and just kind of laying it out, saying it's a baseline, right? It's meant for recruiting. If we get more guys up front, if we get more linebackers, if we get more backs, that now we're going to decide, hey, do we go 4-2-5?
You know, my favorite thing about him, his delivery. I think he doesn't know who he is. I think he doesn't know what he wants to do. And it was a little more engaging than I thought, too. He, outside of maybe Barthel, I think Coach White is probably the one that captivates me the most. And I mean, no coincidence, could have the most impact in my house, right? So it's
Definitely could.
So it's like, hey, what are we doing?
Wink, wink.
No, I mean, that's just the reality of it.
It is reality, but also it's like it's another teaser, right?
Yeah.
We love to tease on this show.
There's no tease. Like hey, Coach Coop, Coach White, like I'll probably
How about
get
what he said about Coop too? How he's like the Red Bull.
Yeah, right. Well, you could tell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he looks like he's constantly got the switch on. And he's moving fast. He talks fast. And he's a Coach Rule guy. I mean, this will be interesting. A lot of juice.
Talk about teases. We couldn't get Max on the show because he's apparently busy doing something tonight. So we're going to talk to his dad next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
back with you. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club, which you should be at Hail Varsity Club tonight because there is a national championship watch party taking place.
Are they still doing the special for the chimichurri wings?
You'd know better than me. That is your item. Outside of the burger with your name on it, that's your other item. That's your alternate item.
No.
Yes.
So when I did the skirt steak yesterday, and it's not very big, right? So the kiddos eat it up in a hurry. But I wanted to do chimichurri sauce. So I just kind of looked it up on TikTok because TikTok is like my new information source.
Yeah, Pinterest to me is TikTok for you.
Pinterest?
Because that's where I get my recipes.
Oh my gosh.
Why are you shaking your head at me? You're using TikTok.
I'm not even going to go there. You get your recipes from Pinterest?
Yeah.
Do you subscribe? Do you log in? Do you have
do I subscribe? No.
But
do I log
don't you
in?
have
Yes.
to do don't you have to do that?
Yeah, but you have to log into TikTok.
No, I meant like subscribe. Like isn't there like people give stuff away for free on Pinterest?
Well, yeah, I mean everything's free.
Oh,
I think.
I don't know.
I only use the free things that are on that Pinterest gives me, I guess.
So and I figured out like I have a bullet at home, like the thing that like mixes, and once
is that
they
like
got
a grinder?
Once they got to like the third green thing, which I think was either parsley or cilantro, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing it because I didn't want to have to go to the store. So it was like
so you didn't have it all.
So there's cilantro, I think parsley, it's garlic.
You don't live too close to a grocery store either.
It's like a stone's throw, right? I had my. Listen, I was bound and determined to not leave my house yesterday. The guys, they went and shot it. It's called the 118 building, and they wanted to go get some shots up. And I was like, sure, Caleb, or Micah. The other can take the other. And I know Micah can't drive, so I knew Caleb would be the one taking him over there. I was like, I'll be getting the marinade ready, right? It was just, I wasn't going to leave yesterday.
You were in your happy place.
Yeah.
The kitchen.
Home. Right.
Well, cooking, and home too.
It's going to be interesting too because there's a treadmill there that's foldable, like you can put it away for storage. So you're like not going to put it on like 2% incline and get it up to like 10.0, but it does the trick. And the biggest dilemma yesterday. To leave it out or to put it away? Do I want this thing like out? Is it an eyesore, or do I put it away somewhere? That was the crux of my stress this weekend.
Hey, did you see?
I major in the minors.
I don't know if you watched what happened when they played 9:00 last night. The Bruins beat the Ducks 7-1. Our guy Steve on Twitter tagged us in the final score.
Stevie O.
Did you know that the Bruins are 32-4-4?
Yes, listen.
32-4-4. That seems like a mistake.
You want the funny thing about that? What was the talk all offseason? Older team, 2-3 stars, older, no depth, front line, top line heavy, key guys starting on injured reserve. They're not going to be as healthy. You're transitioning from a good coach. Are they reloading? Are they starting over? Like, they apparently didn't get the memo.
Which is funny because when you look at like a lot of
am I making teams, that? I know I'm not misremembering. Like,
no.
The Bruins window was supposed to be closer to close than open.
When you look at a lot of the younger teams, people are like, "Oh, well, they have a future ahead of them, right?"
Yeah. What was Boston's?
But you look at the Blackhawks, and they look like a team that can't win a hockey game.
How about us?
Even though they won yesterday.
How about us going down the rabbit hole off air over the Chicago Blackhawks? I'm like, we're leaving, whatever time that was, Friday. It was late. And I'm like, why were we talking about the Blackhawks, their financial? Because
we were talking about
draft.
Bedard.
We were talking about the draft. That's what it was. And I'm like, why did we get into that?
And then I said they have 2 first rounders and 2 second rounders.
Yeah.
The back-to-back years. And they'll probably end up, if their trajectory is on point for this season, in the lottery with a good chance of getting Bedard.
The Pens right now are looking at a wild card.
Which is crazy because the Penguins just can't score right now.
Listen, that's okay for right now because eventually they'll find the back of the net. I always worry about them defensively anyway. So, I mean, if that's the way that it's going to go, I'll take it early.
And Omaha's own Jake Gensel snagged, not Omaha's own, he wasn't born in Omaha, but
Mavericks
alum had 2 goals yesterday. So good on Gensel. Good
By the way, I pulled them up Friday. Like, they don't really have a store, but you have to just go to campus, like, which is in essence is their bookstore. But that O is pretty spectacular.
Well, it's probably one of the
one of the better
logos in all of college.
So
sports,
I give
universities,
Trev a lot of credit for a lot of different things, and the branding and the color scheme and going with Omaha like that was legit. And when that O started to pop, and every time I see it, like I'll see somebody with that, I'm like, it's one of the best logos.
And O doesn't just stand for Omaha, right? Because the U and the N are built into the O.
Oh, I get it.
That's like the crazy tie-in to it all. When my brother-in-law discovered that, when I gifted him some Omaha swag last year, he goes, "Dude, this is like the coolest thing ever," because I just figured out there's a U and N.
Yeah, there's a lot
of
smart people that do design. Like if you look at like Bud Crawford's the like his logo for his gear, there's a T, a B, and a C for Terrence Bud Crawford, but it just looks like one. Tiger Woods did it. You could see the T and the W, and you just have to kind of look.
But in college sports, you don't see it personalized to the person. That's what personalized means. But to the individual, like when it's one person,
he was pretty good at the Governor's Ball.
It's easy to create a logo that represents you, but to create a school logo that represents the whole thing, like Omaha has done, it's pretty special.
Yeah, and they went with the colors. Plus, I'm Team Crutch. I like all those guys. But anyway, if you're Trev, you see all the sound bites they got from at the Governor's Ball, which, by the way, I can't believe I wasn't invited. We got to have a talk about that for you muckety mucks up there. But they're like asking him football questions at the ball. I'm like, listen, if I wanted to hear from the guy, I would just call him. Can we chill with Trev? Hey, how about that? That was like the shot heard around the bow. And then the coach is doubling down in the presser about what it is that they like to do. Football, and some more football. It's like, anyway, stop gassing the fire. What I was going to say is if you were at a ball, black tie event, right? It's a celebratory event. And you wanted to get a soundbite, do you go there for a soundbite, or do you let the folks just do their business and you try to get a snippet if you can?
That's me, the latter.
Yeah. Microphone. And Trev's responding. I'm like,
I was hoping we could fist.
Oh yeah.
There,
well, we could air that.
You pulled it away, and then I was just resting, and I should have just did the.
I'm just wondering why Hurrdat Coffee is like on our big screen up here.
Well, Bill turned it on. Boss man came in. Turned it on.
We're kind of spoiled. You see, we got new chairs.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else saw it too, but we got some nice padding.
I don't think they care.
I bet there was one person out there that said they got new chairs. That's what I said when I walked in. Hey, we got new chairs.
I'm gonna go ahead and.
And then the boss left me some Allen wrenches because he knows my favorite tool in the toolbox.
Those don't even work. They like give you those. And part of the little plastic with all the 89,000 pieces. And it's like,
hey, don't make me come over there and disassemble your chair now.
Fudge. Hey, by the way, when you're talking about the presser with Satin and Coach White. Do you think when you listen to the guys talk, so far we've heard from Rule, we've heard from Coach Satterfield, we've heard from Coach White. Does the message sound the same to you? What they want to accomplish?
Yes.
It does.
But there's different aspects to the message. Like you could hear Tony White talk, and it would be completely different. Schematically, but like on the same page as what they're trying to accomplish. The goal at hand is the same, but everybody has their own idea of how to attain that goal.
So let me rewind a year ago when you heard from the coordinators, Chins, Whip, Coach Frost, and I don't know what the answer is going to be. I'm just curious to see what you thought of like revisionist.
Did we hear an opening statement?
Did it sound like they were on the same page?
Kind of.
Not really for me.
Right. But like when I say kind of, it's like, they know what they want,
so
but
what
they could not get
so what did we hear all off season? Collaboration, need to work together. Who's going to be calling plays? Right. Is it going to be pass heavy, run heavy?
Communication wasn't there.
Just a year removed, not even a year removed, 7 months removed, it seems very clear cut what the initiatives are. That alone puts you about 15% ahead of the game. Mm-hmm. Just simply saying the same thing as we were talking about Friday, Shane, casting the same vision, right? Just go back to what we were hearing in the offseason a year ago, and it's like, we were listening to backup quarterbacks do podcasts saying that coaches were having a hard time giving up play calling duties. 8 months later, this is how we want to play. This is what the offense is going to look like. And this is what we think it's going to take to win games. And it's like, that's different. Not mincing words.
Sam McEwen's next on Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hey, back with you, top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage.
It was just on the television.
Hail Varsity.
Did you see that?
What?
It said gocurrency.com.
The mystery
If
behind
I'm lying, I'm dying.
Well,
You know how
you're not a liar.
we're already paranoid, right? It's like we say something and all of a sudden we see it pop up on the ads
it's
in the
more
computer.
The phone
And you just said gocurrency.com and it was right there on the television.
Like Rawlings baseball glove, Rawlings baseball glove, Rawlings baseball glove. If I start scrolling Facebook, it's going to be like, hey, you want a Rawlings baseball glove?
Stop.
You know what? That's what it does. They listen to us.
That's why you don't do Facebook.
Do you have an like Amazon, like Echo or anything like that? That
I have is that the same as Siri?
No, Siri's on your phone. You probably have like Alexa, right? Yeah, that's Amazon.
Yeah, I have her. So like,
are you
talk
ever
to her?
afraid that she's listening to you?
No, but when I don't want her in my business, she's unplugged.
You know who I want in my business?
Who?
Sam McEwen.
Oh, for sure.
Because I just found
he heard
out,
us saying good things about him last week. Maybe.
I hope so. Sam, I just found out that you're a diehard Bears fan right before we got back.
Oh,
Sam, you with us?
I am.
There he is. Hi,
Sorry.
Sam.
I'm a lifelong Bears fan.
Hey, how about what happened?
Oh, here we go. Hey, I'll get back with you guys here in about 15 minutes.
How fantastic was it to see our guy Lovie Smith give us the number 1 pick?
Well, I feel bad that Lovie got fired. But I think there's kind of a what do you call it? A symmetry to that, an irony to that, and so I think there's a kind of, I don't know. It was, I'm glad the Bears got the first pick. Isn't that weird? You're a diehard Bears fan, and you're kind of glad they lost, and because now they don't have to worry about whether there's a second quarterback or there's a second team that wants to go up. Because Houston was probably going to take one of the two, and then you got to hope that the second one is as good. Now the question is, should the Bears pick quarterback? And I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to trade the pick and get 2, hopefully from Seattle, and try to build around Justin Fields. But I got to tell you, if you're going to ask me between Justin Fields and Bryce Young, I'll take Bryce Young, but we'll see what the Bears do.
Ooh,
interesting.
Blasphemer.
Because I'm more on the Justin Fields side of things, but you make a good case. Everybody makes a good case for Bryce Young.
Hey,
I don't know how you can't.
Sam, let me ask you something. I want to go. Let's go global with college football here. Is on the heels of TCU and Georgia tonight, and you can even weave in Coach White if you will. And I think people were surprised, right, the way that TCU played and their level of physicality, and then everybody started to talk about the 3-3-5 and could it work? And as the Big Ten evolves offensively, and let's say Nebraska uses a tight end and a fullback in 2023 and Wisconsin goes air raid, did you like the way that Coach White's comments landed in terms of how they want to play defense when you look at the rest of college football, or you didn't allow yourself to do that because it's just about Nebraska getting better in the short term?
I liked all of his comments. I thought
yeah,
his
he was
press
good. Yeah,
conference
he was
really good.
He's the real deal.
You could actually see a lot of his personality in that press conference. Toward the end, when he starts going, okay, you know, you can kind of see him getting going. You know, I thought that was great. No, I think what he tried to explain, and I wasn't there. I had a previously scheduled engagement on Friday, so I'll get a chance to catch up with him in a later date. But I think what he was trying to describe was, hey, you know, we want to versatility on defense. We will decide what we do with that extra player, where that guy plays, the kind of player he is. I think at Syracuse it was one kind of guy. At Nebraska it could be somebody else. But I think what he's really pushing is this idea of putting a defense out on the field that can do a lot of different things against a lot of different kinds of offenses, and it's especially attuned to the spread, right? So like he mentioned that the formation group or personnel grouping that is the most common in the Big Ten is 11 personnel, and that's accurate. You know, like there's a lot of teams. You look at Penn State, for example. Penn State's operating out of 11 personnel almost all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State's operating out of 11 personnel almost all the time. So the defense that he runs is a pretty good fit for a lot of what the teams do in the Big Ten, including now apparently Wisconsin. So
isn't that wild?
You know, a little bit. But can I say that, like, I can understand both positions. I can understand why Nebraska's doing what it's doing, and I can understand where Wisconsin feels like they have to do something else than what they've been doing, because I think it does take a lot of good football players to win at the highest level running that offense. And I think Nebraska's going to run into that too. You better recruit. You better know how to recruit. And Matt Rule is very confident in his recruiting. And so you better know how, because if you're going to run this offense, the offense they intend on running, you better have all the pieces. You better have a good offensive line too. And I think Wisconsin was always finding that they were kind of running up against, when they had to go play Ohio State and Michigan, they didn't have the horses to do what they were doing. And so they're trying to go for more versatility. But back to Tony White, you know, I think he's just, I think he's got a lot of thoughts about what they're going to do. And I think part of what he wants to do is probably develop multiple kinds of defenses that can attack all kinds of different kinds of offenses. And that 3-3-5 is built, I think, in that idea. Like, you know, if you run a true 4-3, a 4-down lineman, and you got a 4-man pass rush and all that, there's just certain things that you're going to be about. Lovie Smith is an example of that. But I think the new way of doing things is we're going to bring guys from all over the place. You're not going to know what we're going to do. Sometimes we're going to bust and we're going to give up a big play, but other times we're going to get you behind the line of scrimmage. And that's what people saw in the TCU-Michigan game. TCU's defense made body blow plays. I mean, knockout plays. Two defensive touchdowns, TFLs, all that stuff. They were an offense on defense.
We're speaking with Sam McEwen, sports editor and a Nebraska columnist for the Omaha World-Herald. You can toss him a follow on Twitter at SW McEwen, and he has some fantastic articles about that exact thing he was just talking about regarding Tony White. And on the other side of the football, offensively, Sam, the big thing, the big word that everybody heard was fullback that Marcus Satterfield had mentioned. And he's not talking about, you know, your stereotypical fullback. He's talking probably a more dynamic athlete when he uses that term. But based on what you have seen, whether it's built on the roster or even fullbacks available, if there are a true fullback that they may be eyeing up, you know, the question is who can be the fullback in this offense? And you laid out some names in your article, and I'm curious for you to expand on those.
Yeah, I don't know if any of those names are going to fit. I was just talking about guys that are, you know, currently on the team. But I think what they had at South Carolina was a guy by the name of Jaheim Bell, and he's a really good player. He's going to play in the NFL. And interestingly enough, Satterfield was criticized for not using Bell enough. as a receiver, and that was in the middle of the season. They had this terrible game against Missouri, and I suspect Satterfield would do things differently if he had that game to do over again. But then they figured it out by the end of the season, and they were using Bell as a running back and as a pass catcher, and so he's 6'3" and 235 pounds, and he can do a lot of things. He's very position versatile. He's similar to a Ethan Carter. I don't think Nebraska has Ethan Carter right now.
That guy was playing
so
on Sundays.
To get it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't think they have that guy right now, and so they're probably either going to have to develop him or they're going to have to find him. And so I speculated, okay, well, Quentin Ives is 6'3", 180. Could he bulk up and become that player? That's kind of a stretch. Goodwin, who's a walk-on from Lincoln High, kind of has that size profile. Do they have a running back on the roster that could kind of bulk up or be that? Gabe Irvin, 6', 215. Chancellor Brunson would have been a great fit. I mean, that would have been a guy that you would have tried to use in that role. It's more of a positionless role. So just so people know, like, yes, it's a fullback, but it's a person who can line up as a fullback, can line up as an H-back, can do a lot of different things. So I think people need to be thoughtful about. They're probably not, getting a 5'10" and 197 pound fullback, who can go up, on a fullback dive. I think that's not quite what we're thinking about. So
Snodgrass and Borkature interest me there. That's kind of those H-back versus, because I think Borkature's a better athlete than we give him credit for. He's good at the point of attack, and we know he can catch the ball, and he wears 49. I mean, he's like 2/3 of the way there.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting player, and they may look at him.
Especially if AJ Rollins can hang in there and develop, right?
Yes. Now AJ's 6'6". I mean, he's
I meant where he could play more of the classic tight end role.
Yes. Yeah. I think AJ's physicality was probably the best fit for a tight end coming forward. Challenge with Sidoni is he's got to play. And you got to learn how to play at the college football level, and that takes like playing in games, not just running stairs and doing things like that. And then how much is he going to weigh, and can he play an inline tight end? There's just things you don't really know about him because he hasn't played.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Carney who's banged up a little bit, I think, and then Hickman, who's always been a little banged up. So, there's some question marks there, and Rollins was the one that kind of emerged last year as, among the young guys, somebody you thought maybe could develop more into this season. And, yeah, Borkature, who was the number 2 tight end last year, maybe he can move to that role. And maybe they go find somebody in the offseason. Jaheim Bell didn't come to Nebraska. He transferred to Florida State. So, he's going to play a lot there, and people will hear his name next season. But Satterfield wasn't kidding about the fullback thing. They had one last year, and that was Bell, and people can go watch his play on YouTube.
I thought Satterfield was interesting just because, I got to see him in that environment, kind of hold court with media. I've also talked to him, just kind of sit downs one-on-one, and he strikes me, Sam, as the type of guy that's pretty straightforward, right? It's gonna probably have to be very secure in yourself because he's probably gonna say some things in a way that could give you some pause. I'm looking at quarterback play, Sam. I'm looking at what he had to do with Rattler and how patient he had to be with the evolution of that offense. And remember, it didn't click for South Carolina until late, and he had 4 different guys playing running back, and he ended up getting a converted tight end to play running back. And so I think he'll do what it takes to move the football. But what kind of quarterback and their mindset do you think will mesh well with Coach Sat?
Somebody who's mentally tough.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
Somebody who is smart, but understands what they're trying to get done,
mm-hmm.
And understands that in a way that's, hey, we're trying to possess the football and develop a certain kind of culture within this program, and that means certain things, and these are things that we want you to do, like run the ball. So yeah, I think Satterfield is a strong-minded guy. Not that Mark Whipple wasn't; he was. But I think Whipple could be, we're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw us where you want to go, and that kind of thing. Like, and I think quarterbacks kind of naturally tend to that. Like, oh, you want me to throw the ball deep? Oh, okay. And so I think this offense will be a little different. It'll be a little bit more ball control. It'll be a little bit more, hey, we're gonna play action. There's gonna be guys at 3 levels. I need you to hit this guy, and when you hit your back foot, you got one opportunity to reset your feet, and then you're gonna throw the ball. So there's gonna be, I think, a lot of, and some of that comes from rule. It's not all just from Satterfield, but you're gonna have to play this position a certain way, and it's gonna have to be, game manager first, and then playmaker after that. So that's always been Rule's MO. Like his quarterbacks have not been, run around all over the field and up and down. So I can understand why perhaps it took a while for Satterfield and Rattler to get on the same page, because, Rattler is kind of he wants to make a lot of big plays. So yeah, I think it's going to take a tough-minded person. I'll be curious to see how Casey works, because Casey has opinions.
And even Sims, Casey is a guy that I have more confidence that can, just because I know what he's about. I know him a little better. I think he's a pro's pro. I don't know Sims at all. I'll be curious to see how he receives instruction. I watch him on film, Sam, and when his feet are set, he's got a hose. He can deliver good footballs, but mechanics and staying on balance. There's a lot of polishing they've got to do with Sims. I'll be curious to see how that whole thing unfolds.
Me too. He was playing in a program that just didn't have enough good football players for what they were trying to accomplish. So he got there at a time when they're trying to transition from a triple option offense to a kind of a, more of a pro style zone read offense. And, I think he probably felt a lot of pressure on that team to just make plays, because they had 2 guys really, and one of them then left for Alabama, and then it was kind of just him. So I think in Nebraska he'll be in a tighter structure, and he'll be working for 2 coaches that will be real clear on what they want. So I do think he will develop better, but we'll see with Casey. I mean, I think it'll be interesting. He's tough. Casey's really tough.
Very.
And and he can throw the football, and he can do what you ask him to do. But again, as people have already seen with Casey, he has opinions. He's a verbal processor. He's going to want to work through all that. He's going to work very hard, but he's going to want to work through all those things. And he, the coaches got to adapt a little bit to him too.
Still speaking with Sam McEwen, sports editor and Nebraska columnist for the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, with less than 10 days before the portal closes, there were some visitors up in Lincoln over the weekend. Where are you seeing the biggest the need lie? Is that still on offensive line? Is that on the defensive line? Is it a combination of both? Could it rest in tight end? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? And in regards to Billy Kemp, who was up there too, I asked this to Brian Christopherson, and I'm going to ask you too. Could he be a replacement for Trey Palmer, just based on the similar skill sets there?
I'd be surprised if he were a replacement for Trey Palmer. And that's not a knock on Billy Kemp. That just Trey's 6'2.5" and a sprinter. I mean, and there's just not that many players like that. And he's a straight line runner too. I mean Trey's going to have to make it in the NFL as is that kind of player. He's not Stephon Diggs. That's what I guess I mean to say. And Kemp's got some of those skill sets. He can move a little bit in an offense and, you know, and sit down and shake defenders and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, the offensive line appears to be what they think their need is. And if they have an opportunity to get Rouse from Stanford and the Baylor guard, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but
Mazuka,
he announces
like
tomorrow night. Yeah. He announces tomorrow night, Florida, Auburn, Nebraska. Rouse is Iowa, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. If they get both those guys, then you basically have 3 new starters on the offensive line, which would be quite an achievement for Nebraska. And so I think that's what they feel like their need is. Defensive line, I mean, you always take defensive linemen, but those are like gold. It's really hard to get the best ones. And Nebraska got a couple in the last year that were okay. But it's hard to get great ones because they're taken pretty quickly. So, you know, Malik Hornsby is out there, but I don't think he's going to Nebraska. Probably use another receiver. What's that?
I'm Arkansas.
He's just singing over here.
Yeah, for Hornsby. Hey, but Sam, let me get you out of here on this. I was asking Andrew about just the clarity of message 9 months removed from each of the staffs, right? Could Coach X and Coach Y coexist? Do they seem like they're on the same page? Will it be pass happy versus implementing run game? And we weren't sure. You know, 9 months later, I think they've cast a clear vision on how they want to play. What do you attribute the stark contrast in casting the vision to?
Well, I think you attribute it to Scott Frost not really knowing exactly what he was looking for, what exactly he wanted when he was out hiring. And hiring a guy in Mark Whipple that really didn't, you know, I'm not going to say he didn't respect Scott, but Mark Whipple's his own guy. I mean, he's basically his own guy. And so you're hiring kind of a standalone coach there. Whereas Satterfield would, I think, attribute the majority of his coaching career, or he would say that Matt Rule is his biggest mentor.
Coach Rule doesn't leave much
between that.
Coach Rule doesn't leave much to chance, does he?
Not there. He doesn't.
Doesn't seem like it.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, when he went to Carolina, he did. He hired Joe Brady, and he fired Joe Brady. So, and he fired him relatively quickly. Like, I think halfway into his second year. So, like, when he went to Carolina, I think actually Matt would say that when he went there, he did some things that he won't do again. And I think he thought that he needed to do some certain things to go to the NFL. And I think in hindsight being 2020, I think he was like, I'm just going to do the way things I want to do. And so I think Satterfield is that kind of hire. I think Nebraska could have gone out and gotten, you know, a $1.5 million offensive coordinator. And I'm not saying Satterfield isn't, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think Matt Rule wants to go out and get a coordinator who's going to do what Matt Rule wants him to do. And I think on the defensive side of the ball, I think they went and got a really good coach. And I think that guy, Tony, is just a rising star who really understands, who's probably a head coach candidate here in about 3 to 5 years. And probably is just a dynamic guy that can do a lot of things for them. So I don't think that's that a big of a risk in hiring him. Plus he's young, and the coordinator that Matt Rule had at Carolina and Baylor, I mean, you know, he's about ready to retire. He's like 65 or 66. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid step, and they're all on the Matt Rule train. You know, everybody likes Matt, and they're going to do what he asks them to do.
Sam, you're the best, man. We appreciate your time. We'll talk again next week.
Take care.
That's Sam McEwen, sports editor and a Nebraska columnist for the Omaha World-Herald. Coming up next, we're talking to Brent Soboleski. He's an NFL analyst for Bleacher Report. Tons to get to with Week 18 and the playoff picture, and that is all coming your way next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
At the 4 by Hines, coming straight up the middle to the 20, cuts it back in the 25. He's got an alley.
Radio. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Folk puts his foot into the ball. It's going to be short. Fielded at the 4 by Hines. Coming straight up the middle to the 20. Cuts it back at the 25. He's got an alley down the right sideline to the 40. 50. Down to the 40. 35. 30. 20. 15. 10. 5. Touchdown. Naheem Hines. 96 yards. Run as fast as you can. You're not catching Hines. He's your end zone man. Buffalo on the board with the first play from scrimmage.
Back with you, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers on 590 AM, ESPN Omaha, 1480 ESPN Lincoln, live on YouTube, live on Twitter. We appreciate you joining us for Monday morning's Coffee and Cream. And before we get to our next guest, I'd like to talk to you about Dingman's. Dingman's Collision Center has been in the business for over 25 years in Omaha. They are family-owned and family-run local business. Invest in the latest technology to stay up to date with the ever-evolving technology of what our cars are today. I mean, if you went back 100 years to 1923, people probably thought cars would be flying by now. So 100 years later, here's what the cars look like. But hey, they still have some issues, and on the road, you know, you may get into a crash, you may have a bump in your day, and all of a sudden you need that bump to be out. So you go to Dingman's Collision Center because they work on all makes and models from Fords to Teslas. 4 locations throughout the metro area, along with a standalone mechanical shop at 120th and Maple, voted first place. Best of Omaha for 18 years running. Go to Dingman's Collision Center if you need help with your car. Now, let's move over to our next guest.
Our apologies for that.
It's Brent Soboleski, NFL analyst for Bleacher Report. Brent, good morning. We appreciate you joining us.
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for having me, and I'm glad to see that we're so excited about football again after the week we've gone through. I think that was a great weekend of play just to get everyone feeling better about the game, about Damar Hamlin and everything that occurred in the past 7 days.
I think it was a much-needed week for all sports fans out there. You put it perfectly. The NFL playoff picture, though, is set. Are you confident, Brent, that the 14 teams in are the best 14 teams, or is there a team or two that could be missing?
When you have 7 spots, and I don't mean to chuckle at your question, but any team with a losing record is not deserving of being in the postseason. That's my personal opinion. So we can just abolish the NFC South at the moment because they're not needed. Yet here we are with Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not only in the postseason, but going to host a game in the first round. So, you know, when you look at it, we saw Detroit as an example last night. They had nothing to play for against the Green Bay Packers except for to ruin their rivals, their playoff hopes, and they did, and it was wonderful. And I would more than love to see Detroit in the postseason than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as an example.
I'm a diehard, unapologetic Steelers fan, so I always think they get the benefit of the doubt. But that's a team that's playing really good football right now, too, especially when I look at like Baltimore, even the Dolphins. Gosh, you know, the sad thing is, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, B, just because it's different. So for every, you know, Commanders performance, the Lions, the Texans, teams that obviously have some professionalism, and those guys either have incentive bonuses or they're consummate professionals. How do you explain like Green Bay and Dallas? And maybe they're 2 different things because Dallas is already in, but Green Bay had to win. So in a league where you can typically play it safe, how do you explain what we saw yesterday?
Well, with Dallas, I think it's one of those instances you're already looking ahead, right? You already had your playoff spot. Now you could have improved your positioning. You could have done things to create some momentum going in the postseason. You know, that's neither here nor there when you know that you already have you're locked in and you're going to the postseason. Where the Packers is different, and maybe the answer is a little more simplistic than we were willing to give it. Maybe they're just not as good as what we expected them to be. Hey, I'll sit here and eat crow. I thought this is the year they finally would push into the Super Bowl. It got a little pie on my face this morning, but it just shows that team regressed. Not only the team itself, but Aaron Rodgers has come down from that back-to-back MVP elite level of play that he's had in recent seasons. So I think the situations are different. It's all dependent on the makeup of the team. It's all dependent on the situation itself. And we saw with the Cowboys, it was a letdown. Whereas the Packers, I just don't think they were as good as everyone expected them to be.
Speaking of the NFC North, what do you think is more likely here, Brent? Do you think the Bears just trading away the number 1 overall pick come the draft, or do you think it's trading Justin Fields and taking Bryce Young?
Oh, trading the number 1 pick easily. Because I'm a Justin Fields believer. I will admit it publicly. He's, to me, an electrifying talent who's been placed in a very, very difficult position because the organization hasn't properly built around him during his first 2 seasons. And yet he still finds ways to excel. Now, would you like to see him develop more as a passer? Absolutely. But simultaneously, he has an atrocious offensive line, no weapons around him aside from a decent running game, and he makes up a large portion of that running game, or if not the majority. So you continue to do everything in your power to build around him. In doing so, you leverage that number 1 overall pick to add assets, to go out and get wide receivers, to go out and get offensive linemen, and still potentially land an elite talent in a trade down. So I'll give you an example. One of the most interesting games yesterday, not only because of the outcome and how excited it was by 2 bad teams playing football, but the Colts and Texans. With the Texans' loss followed by Denver's win, the Colts moved to 4th in the draft slotting. Why is that important? Because they're a quarterback-needy team. Everyone knows they're desperate for possession. They could trade up to number 1. You can have Chicago move down to 4, and that's not a huge drop, so they can still land an elite talent like a Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. To me, that's the best, most logical path forward for the Chicago Bears.
Right, let me ask you about, can I have the conversation and give Doug Peterson his due, even after 18, 19, and 20 in Philly, and what he's been able to do in Jacksonville without talking about Urban Meyer? It just seems like they're connected in the short term, but I just look at it as kind of a shot against Peterson where he's probably a better coach than most of us gave him credit for.
Well, let me phrase it this way. I think Doug Peterson could be one of the front runners for NFL Coach of the Year. He's deserving of that honor based on the way he's built that team this year, right? And furthermore, he's getting the most now out of Trevor Lawrence, which is the primary objective when you become the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah. So the reason we can constantly get that juxtaposition isn't just how Urban Meyer and his career went down in flames, but because we are seeing the differentiation in the talent on the team, specifically with the most high-profile player on the squad. Trevor Lawrence now looks like a true franchise quarterback, a guy that was the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. Did he look like that guy at any point last year?
No.
Absolutely not. And Urban Meyer did nothing to help him in that regard. So that's why you're going to constantly get it. But I agree that Peterson deserves far more credit.
When looking at the NFL rushing leaders, it comes as a surprise to probably a lot of people that Josh Jacobs led the NFL this year in rushing yards, a guy that didn't get his 5th-year option picked up by the Raiders. So in his situation moving forward, where do you kind of see a team that could utilize a guy like Josh Jacobs?
Well, what's fascinating about not just Jacobs, but the game and the way it's evolving. So if you look at the NFL this year, going into week 18, and I'd have to look at the stats because I haven't seen the updated version, but there were, as a whole in the league, running backs were averaging more yards per carry or per attempt than ever in NFL history, right? You have more 1,100-yard rushers this year, almost doubling last year's output. So we're seeing this evolution from a defense that defenses have consistently tried to get faster, smaller, and more athletic to play in space. And the counterpunch from the offense is, hey, let's use more man gap principles. Let's play power football. Let's punch you in the mouth because you're not going to allow us to push the ball downfield as much as we want to, so we can create chunk plays in the run game. And so I know you asked me specifically about Jacobs, but I think we're looking or sitting at the precipice of a change in how we value the position. And it's a great time to do it because it's not just Josh Jacobs. You have multiple guys ready to enter the free agent market and a very good running back class. So let's not forget, Bijan Robinson, according to the Bleacher Report scouting department, is a top 5 overall talent in this year's class. So it's going to come down to which teams are going to start to value running backs more than we've seen in recent years. And I can't necessarily project those at the moment, so I apologize. But I think it's going to have more emphasis than we've seen over the last decade or so.
Brett, I'd be remiss not to get your opinion. Who's playing in the Super Bowl? I won't even hold you to a winner till we talk to you in a couple of weeks. Who's playing in the Super Bowl?
Well, I already said that I've missed on the Packers, but I did have the Bills in the AFC, so I will stay there. On the NFC side of things, I don't know which way I'm leaning. I will go out of the blue. I'll go out of the blue and say Minnesota. How's that?
Wow.
I'll give them their credit.
Wow. Man, we're holding you to that, and then 2 weeks down the road,
he'll be a genius.
Let me give you one stat. One stat. 11-0 in one possession games this year. So they know how to win in close contests, which is what the postseason is all about.
Brent, thanks so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. You have a good one.
Mark Weiser coming up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
We are a 4-quarter team that we're going to continue to fight until 0-0 on that clock. We're never going to give up on our brothers. We speak on each and every week on how we brotherhood here.
Closing out the show, Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. And we're closing the show by talking to Marc Weiser, Georgia beat writer for the Athens Banner-Herald. Mark, good morning. How are you doing this fine morning?
Championship Monday.
Monday morning as a Georgia reporter. Mark, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, Mark.
Good. Hey, Mark, real fast here, because we do a little college pick'ems, and we did a bunch of bowl game predictions, and Damon, of course, comes away with a grand total of 26.
I don't know about of course.
So, out of nowhere, Damon Benning, of course, knows his college football. But aside from that, Shane and I are tied right now, and it comes down to tonight's game. We both picked Georgia, and whoever is closer to the total points doesn't have to buy breakfast for the other two tomorrow morning.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Shane picked 72 points and I picked 73 points for total points scored in this game. If you had to choose a total point number, would it be under 72 or over 73 for this game?
I think I don't necessarily expect another 42-41 game like Georgia just had, but I guess, TCU just. So I don't know. I think maybe they'll button it down a little bit on defense, and but I guess the only betting on breakfast, so whatever.
So I'm paying for breakfast. Sweet.
Hey, so we heard from McIntosh and the highlight there, and I'm looking at Georgia. Listen, the great front four and the speed on defense, and we have a hard time sometimes naming their starting trio of wide receivers or getting the respect they do for Stetson Bennett. When you look at this Georgia football team, in your opinion, how underappreciated are they as an offense as a whole?
Well, I think the Georgia fan base certainly appreciates it, especially because they've been waiting for an offense that can be this diverse and have so many different offensive weapons. They don't have necessarily, a star receiver like, Ohio State had, like TCU has. Well, they sort of do. A.D. Mitchell, but he's been out for most of the year with a high ankle sprain, came back and had the big touchdown there with under a minute to go. But Brock Bowers is their biggest playmaker, and he's a tight end and part of a terrific duo with Darnell Washington, who may or may not play tonight. This is an offense that had been kind of, its RBU is kind of their bread and butter with Todd Gurley, with Nick Chubb, with Sonny Michel, but they Stetson Bennett threw for 399 yards the other 10 days ago, whenever that game was. So they're certainly a lot more exciting, and Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator in his third year, has really taken it to a new level.
Speaking of Stetson Bennett, this is a guy that didn't get a lot of love coming into this season. People kind of thinking like, hey, Stetson Bennett isn't as good as we think he is because he plays on Georgia and Georgia's such a good team. But he's kind of low key the engine that makes this offense go. How important has his play been this year to get Georgia to this point?
Yeah, I think he pretty much, his story of being a former walk-on who had to transfer to a junior college and came back on scholarship was, I think he made a bunch of believers when he beat Michigan, MVP of the Orange Bowl, beat Alabama, MVP of the national championship game, and look, Georgia's 14-0 now. He was a finalist for the Heisman. I think he's going to find his way onto an NFL roster somehow. He certainly wasn't heralded coming out of high school, but it's hard to ignore, what he's done in the last two seasons as Georgia, want to win away for another national title.
And speaking of not being, you used the word heralded. I remember when Smart was hired, right? In this transition of the SEC, and it was pretty lukewarm on the national level, right? And then, it's trying to get over the hump, and yeah, he's just a good recruiter. But man, and we heard McIntosh say it again in the open, They talk about the culture and the chemistry. I listen to Kirby's pressers about guys playing and what it means and understanding being the hunted and a standard of play. Safe to say he's got this culture thing down pat. 4 years removed from the hire, Georgia fans got to feel like they did pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, he's only 47 years old. He's in the national title game for the third time in 6 years. And, his second year, mostly with Mark Richt's players, and there's no sign of slowdown the way they're recruiting. He gets whatever he needs facility-wise, financially, in terms of staff. If there's a $500,000 buyout to get an assistant coach that he wants, Georgia's writing that check. And he's totally he's totally driven. I mean, I'm sure if they win tonight, tomorrow morning he's going to be going through a to-do list of things he needs to do for next season. So, there's no sign that this kind of trade is slowing down.
TCU has kind of embraced that underdog role all season long, being that team that nobody thought would make it to the national championship. I think they were 200-1 odds, if I remember correctly. They do have some various weapons that could be cause for concern for Georgia. But when Georgia looks at TCU, they're concerned by actually what?
Well, if you saw what LSU did, 502 yards passing in the SEC championship game. Now, much of it was in the second half when Georgia had the game in control. And then C.J. Stroud, found a way to, get out of the pocket, make plays with his feet. And also in the passing game, their secondary, has been torched the last couple of weeks. But they made stops at the end when they needed to. So I think TCU, obviously, with Max Duggan and his core of receivers, is a threat, and the way he can run on design runs and scrambles, there's a challenge there.
Mark, when you're taking a look at an X factor, I think some people were surprised by TCU's physicality and their style, and sometimes even Michigan players alluded to a little bit of the complexity and scheme. You got to feel pretty good about the veteran leadership and big-time performances of Bennett and some guys having some experience when you look at the degree of difficulty that TCU can bring in terms of scheme.
Yeah, I mean, they play a 3-3-5 defense that Georgia's seen a couple of variations this year, I think, against Kent State, Mississippi State. But they're opportunistic on that side of the ball. I mean, their defenses are not very impressive, but they had a couple of pick sixes last week. And Stetson Bennett, he's known to have a player or two that, Kirby will get on him on during the game. And so he really can afford that kind of thing in this game to allow TCU to keep it close with, a kind of a boneheaded type of play. But he's been in these games he plays his best in these biggest games when you look at the final result. And so, I think Georgia feels good about his experience in this environment.
We're speaking with Marc Weiser, Georgia beat writer for the Athens Banner-Herald. You can follow him on Twitter at Marc Weiser. That's Weiser. Mark, when you say Georgia wins this game, who's going to be the hero? What's going to be the hero play in this game?
The storyline.
That's a good question. Last year it was somebody we didn't expect. It was Keely Ringo with a pick six. To take it back and seal the deal. So I'm going to think it's going to be someone that is not necessarily on the top of our tongue, somebody that, they got so many 4- and 5-star recruits on this roster that are kind of waiting for their moment. So I can't really pull out a specific name, but it might not be Stetson Bennett, although, Bennett seems to be the MVP in all these games. Somehow, some way, he's going to probably get that trophy.
Mark, let me get you out of here on this. Listen, Kirby worked for Nick, and we know that story, but he's coming to his own now. Georgia's arrived. They are holding serve and could win their second national championship. Is there talk, or do you just let the sleeping dog lie that there has been a shifting of power in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, that's been out there. I mean, I think Paul Feinbaum is kind of stoking that fire, weekly. So, I'm not sure. I don't think Kirby's going to, if they win tonight, he's not going to embrace that narrative. I think Stetson Bennett said the other day that, back-to-back isn't necessarily a dynasty. You got to keep, building them up. So, I think there is kind of a changing of the guard, whether when you went back to back, I mean, you're the hot team. You're the it factor. So Alabama's got to contend with that. But Saban's got a closet full of trophies still.
That sounds weird to
Mark,
say.
thanks so much. We appreciate your time. Have some fun tonight.
All right, should be good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
That is Mark Weiser, Georgia beat writer for the Athens Banner Herald. And
it's always interesting if people want to accept that role, that mantle, because sometimes you downplay it as though it's not really a thing. It's like if you don't say it out loud, then it's not really a thing. Other times people embrace it like, yeah, we're the new kids on the block.
This is a great follow-up to our poll results of today. The poll question was, who are you taking tonight in the national championship game? Are you taking Georgia at -12.5, or are you taking TCU plus 13.5? And the reason I put the spread in there was because if I just put Georgia TCU, people would hammer Georgia because they are, heavily favored in this game. But by putting these odds in, it's kind of a little more difficult. Now that I'm looking at it, I put -12.5 and plus 13.5 for TCU. I meant 13.5 for both, but regardless, it's back down to 12.5, and 65.6% of the audience thinks 13.5 in favor of TCU.
Interesting. And other news on this Black Monday, what the Texans letting go of Lovie Smith already?
The Texans, we'll get into this in the morning dump too, because the Texans talk about a team that's like, hey, we plan for the future, we plan for this, and then they fire a coach back-to-back years after one season.
Doesn't seem
you're not going to be planning for any sort of future, regardless of, hey, a one-and-done coach next year beside that. But we'll get into that in morning dump, and you can head that direction now, because that's where we're going to continue talking about things that we can't get to on Coffee and Cream in the Morning. Until tomorrow, we'll see you then.